when your work isn't a real drag. It's loving what you do. Support for this podcast comes from Charles Schwab. Since 1973, Charles Schwab has been committed to helping individual investors. Let's work toward your tomorrow together. You can learn more at schwab.com. Hey, welcome to the Military Money Show, where I help the military community make, save, and invest money wisely. I'm your host, Lacey Langford, the military money expert. I know what it's like to get out of the military. I know what it's like to be a military spouse. I even know what it's like to be a military brat and what it's like to experience your husband getting out of the military and all the ups and downs that come with it. Your identity, career, and earning potential can quickly get wrapped up in it, and it's easy to get caught inside of a bubble and not see the possibilities outside. Had I known then what I know now, the path I took to get to the point where I am at now doing work I love, it would have been a whole lot smoother. That is why I'm so excited to share this interview with you. Life is a balancing act, especially military life. We all have priorities, hopes, and dreams, financial responsibilities, and family. Sometimes these can get out of sync and we end up doing work that doesn't fulfill us. Many military spouses put up with work they don't like for little money because of limited options. Many veterans struggle to find work after the military that they can earn a living at and enjoy. But what if you leverage things like your personality, your natural skills, and your passions to find meaningful work? Well, my guest, Dan Miller, is the author of the New York Times bestselling 48 Days to the Work You Love. He has over 140,000 people subscribe to his weekly newsletter, and his 48 Days podcast consistently ranks in the top 1% of all podcasts. His mission is helping listeners find or create work they love. Dan and I talk about how it's possible for the military community to make money doing things you're passionate about and how it can change your life. Our conversation left me completely inspired. I hope you find inspiration in it too. Here is my chat with Dan. Dan, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be your guest today.
I'm excited to have you on. I wanted to have you on this show because I coach a lot of people in the military community as it relates to money, to business, to careers, and many of them are struggling with the decision of their career path. For service members, it's what do they want to be when they grow up after they leave the military? And for many military spouses, they struggle with finding their career path or finding their calling and their identity as they follow their service member around. And I think your book and what you do would really resonate with everybody. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you, and I really appreciate your willingness to come on the show.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I know it's unique issues relative to the military, but certainly not things that are not resolvable. There's great options for everybody today.
Yes, I do really think that. And I think too, a lot of this is personal for me because the way I started my business was trying to figure out who I wanted to be. And I did want to have good quality of life around what's most important to me is my family. And then everything else will come after that. But I did want to help people with money, but I was a military spouse. So trying to navigate my calling and trying to make money compared to what my husband was doing was difficult. So I think I've figured out a lot, but other people I see struggle with this. So I think it's a good conversation to give people at least something to think about, to try to strive for.
Those things that you mentioned, wanting to be a caregiver for your children, family's important and all. Fortunately, those are not either or choices. When you say you want to do that, but you still want to do something meaningful. You want to do that, but you still want to create income. You don't have to choose. You can do both. So we look for and solutions, no matter what those are, based on what your priorities are.
Yes. And I think what you've done has really made, a tool for people that it took me a very long time to land where I'm at. And a lot of it was hard lessons learned, mistakes that I've made, huge embarrassments, and a lot of personal sacrifice, balancing family life because I am the primary caregiver of my children. I always, have been. And that's something that's very important to myself and to my husband. But I also wanted to have my own career. And so this juggling act, like you're saying, not having to go one way or the other, give up one thing to have another. It took a long time to get there. So I wanted to ask you, why did you write your book, 48 Days to the Work You Love and Life You Love? Did you have a clear picture of that from the get-go? Or is this something that it was a little rougher around the edges when it started?
It was very rough because I didn't sit down and say, I want to write a book. It didn't originate like that at all. My wife and I were asked to teach a Sunday school class at our church, a large church on the south side of Nashville, Tennessee, on career life management, career life transitions, these inevitable changes that people seem to be going through. And we agreed to do that. My academic background is in clinical psychology. I had some experience doing that. I wasn't looking for a change in what I was doing at all, but agreed to teach the class. And I was thinking that I would have in there, the 20-year-old who just lost his job at Burger King and wanted to get another job, or somebody who was trying to figure out what to major in college. And I had a few of those, but what surprised me is that I had physicians, dentists, attorneys, pastors, engineers, accountants. And I'm like, what are you guys doing here? And they're like, well, everybody sees us as doing okay, and we are, but I don't think this is it. I think there's something more. I think I did what I did just because I had the academic ability to do it, or just because my parents expected me to do it. I was following family traditions. So there were a lot of reasons like that. And these people were looking for something deeper, something more meaningful than just how do I create a paycheck? There are a lot of ways to do that. So I had the privilege of walking people through that kind of process. So it was just in developing that material and just serving my community well. I had no intentions of turning that into a book, a course, or anything profitable. I'm a sales guy. I'm an entrepreneur. I was doing fine. But as the questions became more and more prevalent and more people showed up, I recognized this is an opportunity to perhaps do something more meaningful than what I've been doing personally anyway. So it developed out of that. But it was after years of doing that that I then put it together in a format that eventually became a book. I put it together first just as a 3-ring binder with a couple of cassettes in there. And I went to a Mark Victor Hansen conference on selling books, Mega Book University in Los Angeles in 2002, and came back and I thought, well, this guy knows how to sell books. I'll do some of the things that he did. And in the next 18 months, I sold over $2 million worth of that 3-ring binder. So the message really resonated with people who were in those kind of positions that I described. So it's not just an initial career decision, but it's how do I make my life meaningful? How do I do something that has purpose and significance as well as income? Material developed out of that and then became a book. And of course, now is in its 20th anniversary edition, which I'm grateful for.
Wow, that's amazing. I think that's really important to highlight is that a lot of things that you do in life or your career that you're trying to find meaning in aren't perfect from the get-go. Like it's iteration after iteration and improvements, mistakes, learning, all of these things. So I think that's really cool that it started out with you were just trying to help people. That was the core of what you were doing. And then you found a better way to help more people.
Absolutely. And that's what it was. It was just simply my desire to help more people. So we gave and gave and gave and gave in those early years. And then, like happens so often, when it is something that really comes from your heart, from a desire to serve well, the opportunities for financial prosperity show up unexpectedly around that. And that's certainly been the case for me.
Yes, you touched on that, the finding meaning versus finding profit or making money. Do you feel like people aren't clear on that in the beginning, that when they're trying to find their life's work or something that they love to do, that they're looking for the money first and not the meaning? And does one come before the other?
Well, typically, the one that comes first is the money. I mean, somebody graduates from school and it's like, oh, wow, who's hiring? Who has the largest salaries being offered? Or if it's an online business, golly, Uncle Harry is making a killing on Amazon. I'm going to go do that. And they chase the money first and hope that the meaning kind of falls in line after that. I know it sounds kind of perhaps too easy to say we need to reverse that, but I find that's really true. I mean, I would rather help somebody grow dandelions if that's their passion Let's figure out a really creative way to do that and knock it out of the park rather than try to talk them into be a computer programmer because we know there are job opportunities there. It's just life is too short. So this idea of following your passion, I really am a proponent of that. Let's do that. And then we can be creative. I mean, even with what I've done now, primarily as an author, I mean, I'm seeing as an author, we know that 95% of authors in America never make more than $40,000 a year. It's pretty easy to track those stats. That's pretty discouraging. With me being an entrepreneur and pretty aggressive financially, that should be really discouraging. No, that's not how I approached it. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I really had passion for doing. So my first response was, how tough can it be to put myself in the 5% of authors? All I have to do is look at what authors are doing and be willing to do things they're not. And it's very easy to put myself in that 5%. So figure out what you want to do, what really gives you meaning, a sense of meaning and purpose and accomplishment. Then we can figure out the economic piece on the backside. And we can do that with virtually anything that you can propose as an idea. But people often short circuit that thing. No, I have to be responsible. I've got student loan debt. I need to just jump into this because it pays well and I need to bite the bullet and figure out how to endure it.
Yes. I say to myself, if I had known about entrepreneurship, maybe I would have done some things a little bit differently when I started out. But I think knowing, okay, this is what I'm doing, I can make money at it later is a mantra that I've told myself over and over again, is just to help provide value as it relates to money to the military community. And then the other stuff will start to snowball. But if I'm not good at what I do and don't have passion for what I do, people are going to pick up on that. First of all, they're going to pick up that I don't know what I'm talking about. They also are going to pick up on that I don't really like what I'm talking about. Versus if you do have passion for something, people are going to hear that in your voice and the things, your actions that you're doing. And then people want to get behind that. So I think like your book, like helping people really try to figure out something that they can do and make money at that they love is something that's of value to them and they can get behind. So I love that.
And if you have a message that really resonates with people, that gives them hope and encouragement and allows them to move forward, I mean, they're going to figure out ways to put money in your pocket, even if you aren't clear on how that's going to happen. I mean, it's amazing. I have right in front of me here in my office, Lacey, a beautiful, beautiful painting that was done by a young man who came to me actually as a pastor, but he was struggling with that. And in talking to him about 10 minutes, I was like, man, who sold you this bill of goods? And he was really taken back because he thought, well, I'm doing the most godly thing possible. And I said, no, you're not. You're an imposter. You're trying to be something you're not. I said, what do you do that when you're doing it, you really feel alive? You feel like you're in that zone. And he very quickly said, I go into a little room and I rent a house. I lock the doors. I put on Beethoven or Mozart and I paint. I said, let's do that. He was like, what do you mean? I mean, I walk away from my calling, do something where we know artists starve. No, today he's making probably 10 times the money he ever dreamed of making as a pastor, has way more opportunity to really serve people authentically than he did before. That's the power of that. Let's follow your heart. And again, don't make that just sound just trite, but do that first. Figure out a way to serve people well, and the money will show up in even unexpected ways.
Yes, I totally agree with that. You mentioned in your book about the importance of knowing who you are. And I feel very passionately about that because, for example, in the career path that I do, I'm a financial coach. There are a million people that are financial coaches. And there are a lot of people that are way smarter than me or do it differently than me. But there's only one me. So what do you say to people that are really kind of struggling to figure out what they want to do and how figuring out who they are is important to that process?
Don't think that you have to have something never before known to man. I mean, I get a little tired of these, 7 secrets never before revealed. Are you kidding me? I mean, that's just not true. But be authentic. You don't have to be smarter than everybody else. You don't have to have new information nobody else has. It can be unique to you. When I wrote 48 Days to the Work You Love, you could walk in any bookstore. There's going to be 80 books in there on how to find work that you love, how to figure out who you are, how to start a business, all of those things. But yet I was able to craft my message, the stories that I had heard, the way that I had helped people walk through the processes. That's enough uniqueness. I mean, you can get wealthy by doing something 10% better than what is being done now. It doesn't have to be brand new. Just figure out a way to do it a little bit better. What is it that you can be known for? in a sea of financial counselors. What are you known for? Here's an example, Lacey, that will help kind of frame this. Being a career coach, which I am, if you put in career coach in a Google search, you're going to get 12, 13 million sites. I'm probably in there somewhere. I don't know where, and it doesn't really matter. You put in 48 days, just that phrase, I'm going to own the first 2-3 pages of Google. Not because of fancy SEO techniques or because of paid advertising, not at all. But I'm the guy who says, yeah, you can change the direction that your life is going. You can change it dramatically. You don't have to wait till the kids graduate from school. You don't have to wait till the mortgage is paid off, till you get another degree. Well, no, you can do it in 48 days if you create a plan and act on it. That's my distinct advantage in a sea of thousands of other career coaches. So that's what you look for when you come in. Don't just be another one of many. Find something that makes you stand out so you become known for that in any profession.
Yes, and also you're not just talking about it. You're giving people a plan of action, which I think is so important, not to just be vague about it, is to say, no, actually today starts your 48 days. And these are the steps that you take to make this happen, I think is important, especially when you have no idea where you want to go. There's so many choices in the world. And if you start to look at what happens if I step outside my world, to those things that you mentioned where, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what my family wants me to do, or this is what the family does as a career. How could I go outside of that? How could I go against what is my norm? And then if you do go out there, then it's like, whoa, there's a lot of stuff. It gets overwhelming.
Well, it is. And so that's both good and bad. Meaning, we go back a couple of generations. If your mom was a teacher, your life could be a teacher. If your mom was a nurse, boom. If your dad was a carpenter, you follow that. Today, I talk to high school kids who can't describe what their mom and dad do. They don't really know because we've moved into this information age, people working online, and that's much harder to describe. That can be, again, an advantage or a disadvantage. So instead of having the generational expectation, just do this, we've got this wide open, clean slate from which to choose. So it really requires going introspectively first. I tell people 85% of the process of having the confidence of proper direction in your career comes from looking inward first. Don't look at who's hiring, what the trends are. No, that comes later. Go inward first. Look at what are your unique skills and abilities, your personality tendencies, your values, dreams, and passions. That should give you a clear focus. And then we can ask from that, what are the career, business ideas and opportunities that would line up with what we know now? That's the 15% part. But a lot of people reverse that. They simply look at who's hiring, where can I get a job, what's making the most money. They go there, and then 5 years later, they're burned out, discouraged, and can't figure out why.
Yeah, and unhappy.
Yes.
How can people do this self-reflection? Because I do think that's really important, is to have self-awareness in who you are and your strengths and your weaknesses. But often that's, I don't know, that's like hopes and dreams to people. How do you capture that and make it a reality? Is that something maybe you do a survey, you ask your friends to help out? Like, what do you think my strengths are? What do you think my weaknesses are? How do you begin that?
Sure. And that's a great question because it can sound a little elusive. But when we talk about hopes and dreams, how do you put parameters around that? But this doesn't have to be a real philosophical process, where you have to go to the desert for 3 months, and hope that you get the bolt of lightning from God. No, it can be a 3-hour process to sit down and really look and ask yourself those questions. So there are questions to ask yourself. What have I done well? Not only what have I done well, but what have I enjoyed doing? What things have I done in my business and work career that I've really enjoyed? What are the things that were just kind of necessary components that I felt like I had to do to move forward? So at any given time, you can draw that line in the sand and do that kind of reflection back. And that's why having a little life experience, having 4 years or 20 years in the military is a great framework to reflect back on and ask yourself those questions, because there you're likely to have had a wide variety of experiences. That's a plus, not a minus. That's why I would rather work with somebody who's 42 years old than somebody who's 18, because we have more from which to draw. So you look back on those things, there ought to be some clarity. When is it when I've really felt alive? We talk about athletes being in the zone. We all ought to experience those times where we feel like, wow, This is what I was born to do right now, right here. So as we see patterns in those, then it becomes more clear. What are the things we want to then blend in what we do daily? So then the question is simply, how can I create an economic model? And what we want here is a three-legged stool. And the three legs are talent, passion, and money. Missing any one of those legs, the stool will fall over. So a lot of people recognize they have talent and passion for something. I mean, I've spent a lot of years in Nashville, Tennessee. We have a lot of people who are incredibly talented musically, and they're living in a cardboard box under a bridge because they've never figured out how to create an economic model. So if you're passionate about something and you're talented, you've just defined a hobby, but it's not a business, it's a hobby. So if you can figure out how to create an economic model, again, even if it seems like something impractical and unrealistic to observers on the outside, wow, you're ready to go. But that's the power of that process. Then instead of just trying to replicate what somebody else has done, or you just choose a career because it seems to be popular right now. No, it comes from deep within and gives you that sense of being in the driver's seat of your own life.
Yes, I love that. I think that in the past, I've looked at things I don't like, and that has also been very helpful in moving forward and finding my passion and things to look at. That didn't make me happy. That didn't make me comfortable. That wasn't easy for me. Not that, I'm trying to get out of hard work, but it's just like, it just wasn't a good fit for me versus that zone that you're talking about. I've always explained to my husband, I knew that I really wanted to be a financial coach because that's when I kind of get lost. I will have talked about money for 3 hours with somebody and it felt like 15 minutes. Like it just disappeared. I was lost in the moment. And what I was saying was resonating with that person. And it felt like, I call it the zing, that you have the zing that they're, you're really connecting and you're giving that person value, motivation. And when they walk out of that session, they're like, wow, I feel really good for having talked with Lacey about money or whatever it is. And then that's how I kind of knew that, like you're saying, this zone. But then other times I've looked at the things I don't like, and that's helped me kind of been guardrails for me to be like, that's not someplace I want to go because it's just no fun. Yeah, I might be able to make money at it, but I'm miserable and I'm not making the people I'm working with feel good because I really don't like it.
We've moved away from the old model where somebody comes out of school, they choose a career, they put in 35 years, get a gold watch and retire. I mean, that just doesn't happen anymore. We know that most jobs are going to be about 2.5 years in length. Those in their 20s and 30s right now, the average job tenure is 11 months. That's how rapidly things are changing.
Wow.
What that means then, by the time somebody is 30, they're likely to have had a series of jobs. Oftentimes, just as you described, the biggest value of those is helping them understand what they don't want to do. That's a legitimate part of this process of refining and getting closer and closer to really what the ideal is. Understand what you don't like doing. So there's really no mistakes to be made in the early part of a career. You do that, and then you have the opportunity to reflect back on, do I want that to be a continuing part of what I do moving forward? Now, the challenge is oftentimes that people make a decision at 18 that they think is going to lock them into something they're going to do for the rest of their life. And of course, we see people that, go into the military and put in long careers, and a lot of reasons for doing that. We see people who get a law degree or a medical degree, and they feel trapped because of that, because now they feel like they've committed to that one thing and they have to stay there. But we see more and more people who are kind of drawing that proverbial line in the sand, whether it's at 28 years old or 35 or 40 or 50, saying, you know what, I'm not sure I want to continue doing this, even though it seems like everything in my career is pointing me to just continue. Or we have those golden handcuffs where if you just do this for 13 more years, then you're going to have a retirement plan in place. Like, oh my gosh, how could you endure something you weren't sure about for 13 more years? But it happens.
What do you say to people that are listening that are scared, that are worried about what people will think if they try something new or test a new career path out, or the fear of failure? What do you say to them?
Yeah, that can be perceived as a big obstacle. With the kind of things that people are doing today, the kind of things you and I are doing that are, don't have strict guidelines. You show up at 8:00 and leave at 5:00. They're not just traditional jobs. We have so many opportunities kind of in this space. What I often encourage that person to do, experiment with your idea. Invest 15 hours a week in doing that. Don't just burn the bridge with what you're doing. No, 15 hours a week. Get to where you're generating 50% of your current income. That has a way to build confidence where you see the trajectory and you think, oh my, if I quit what I'm doing now and put all my time in this, I could easily close that gap. It also will take away the sting of family and friends who are looking in saying, you're crazy. You shouldn't be leaving this. And a lot of times I have a gentleman right now who's making $400,000 a year that I'm working with. Well, he's terrified. And so we're using the process that I just described. Don't leave that. He's frustrated. He's upset. He's getting ulcers and all that. He needs to change. But even there, I'm saying, don't just leave that and we hope to figure something out. Let's start something, see a trajectory of success, and then you'll have the comfort to be able to leave that.
I like that. And I think that's possible in the military community as at some point you're getting out of the military one way or the other. And you have that time to start practicing, start testing things out, start making money on the side, and not have to get out of the military and then say, what am I going to do now? No, you could actually start testing the waters years in advance, especially if you had like an interest, let's say in photography or cake baking, whatever it is, you could start testing that theory out in the 3 legs that you're talking about. Do you have passion for it? Are you good at it? Can you make money at it? Then you can rip the Band-Aid off and go full force into it. But I think testing it's good.
And with the military, the exit timeline is usually clearer than it is in just corporate America. Corporate America, and you can walk in tomorrow morning and they say, hey, clean out your desk. We don't need you anymore. In the military, it's usually planned way in advance. So it's a perfect setup for what you just described. If it's coaching, speaking, writing, having an online business, we can go through 30 different things. Go ahead and start now. Don't wait until you have nothing and feel desperate. Start now by investing that small amount of time so that you start to see some success. So you have a safety net in place to experiment with different things to see what is it that you really would thrive in doing.
As a coach, how do you handle people that use, let's say, maybe circumstances as an excuse for not taking action, to say, well, that won't work for me because of X, Y, Z, or this won't work for me because of X, Y, and Z. If you want to have work in a life that you love, you have to start taking some action. So how do you help people that maybe are trying to excuse away why they haven't taken action?
Well, we need 12 hours to address that question totally. So let's just make it real simple. There's an old Henry Ford quotation that says, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. That really is the essence. Now, I ran into a gentleman not too long ago. One of the books that I have is 48 low or no cost business ideas. In the back of that, I have links to another resource that has 100 and another resource that has 1,100 ideas for things you can do on the side to generate income. I ran into a gentleman. He's an IT expert. So he's in that field. He said, hey, I read your book, it sounds like fun, but there's nothing in there that would work for me. I said, so you saw the links in the back to the other ideas? Yeah, there's nothing there that would link for me. I didn't go any further because he's already decided nothing will work for him. You know what? He's exactly right. We all have things that show up unexpectedly in our lives. I mean, this last year has showed us that in a dramatic way. Things that have happened unexpectedly. We all have reasons things won't work. But if we have a clear sense of what we want to move toward, there's really nothing that can stop us. It has way more to do with mindset than it does circumstances. It's not the economy. It's not COVID. It's not who's in the White House. It's what's between your own 2 ears. That is the determinant. And there's really nothing that can stop that. I've seen people make dramatic moves forward this last year when everything seemed to be against that. But they decided they were going to do it. I get uncomfortable real quickly when somebody starts describing all the circumstances and unexpected things that have made it challenging for them or impossible for them to move forward. No, probably not unlike what a lot of other people have experienced. And I don't want to diminish there are certainly tragic things that happen to people, but still comes down to decide. Decide, the word itself, the etymology of the word comes from the same word as suicide, homicide. It means something dies. When you decide, wow, it's finished, you're going to move forward no matter what. If it's just a wish or a hope, circumstances can change. But if it's a decision, then just keep moving forward.
I love that. I love that quote. And like Invictus, do you know that poem?
Yes.
I love the last two lines that I'm the master of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul. And I always say I'm the captain of my ship. And whenever I have a bad day, yes, I do have, a pity party, but I put a time limit on my pity parties. So I won't wallow in it. It's like I got an hour to get right. And usually in that hour, my pep talk is that I'm the captain here. Like I can just decide to start, I don't know, lay down and not steer the ship, or I can get up and figure out a new course forward, figure out the problem, figure out a solution. And a lot of it really does come down to the decision. I've noticed that in business and in life, me not making a decision and going ahead and moving forward one way or the other, that nagging is really the most stressful part for me. So in deciding what the life and the work that you want, that you love, is making the decision. Am I going to do this? Am I going to go for it? Am I going to try it, see what happens, fail, not fail, really succeed, and or maybe go a different path? I think really does come down to you being in charge and making that decision, like you said.
Oh, it does. I set goals. I love setting goals and a lot of things, but it surprises people sometimes when I share that I set goals so that I think I have about a 50-50 chance of hitting those. If I set goals where I hit everyone 100%, I'd be mortified. Think, wow, I set things too low. I set my sights. I've got some goals set for this year that are just outrageous. I have no idea how it could possibly happen, but I set the goal anyway. And at the end of the year, I'm pretty confident I'm going to be a lot closer to that than what I am now, even if I don't hit it totally. So I don't beat myself up if I don't hit it totally, but I still give myself something that I'm shooting for. I know exactly what direction that I'm going in. Speaking of, you're talking about Invictus, captain of your own ship, there's a Jonathan Winters quotation: if your ship doesn't come in, swim out to it.
Ooh, I love that.
A lot of people think, well, gee, I want that. But, when you think about the reality of if a ship comes up to you and you're standing on the shore, you know what? It's probably a canoe or a dinghy. It's not a cruise ship. It's not something big and magnificent, a sailing ship. They can't get that close to the shore. It is out there by design because it's so grand. You have to go after it. So when you decide, what is that going to look like? Then you create a plan and start moving in a direction that's going to separate you from the pack real quickly.
Yes, because a lot of people won't do those things. I think the mindset is so important. If you think you can't do it, that's exactly what's going to happen. And that's your mantra. You're telling yourself that over and over again versus I can do this. I can figure it out. I'll just keep trying. There are going to be bumps, but oh well, I still have that mindset that I'm going to figure it out. And too, about the day and people's struggles, I often think that is when something really bad happens to me, because it does. Like that's life. Bad things have happened to me and to me personally, my business, all of these things. But I always think somebody else is having a bad day too. Like I can't be the only one. And I know somebody probably has it worse. And so, I try to keep perspective. I think that's really important. And the work you're trying to do, your career, managing your money, everything is to try to keep perspective in what you're doing.
It really is. I grew up on a farm. So I grew up with very tangible kind of things. You milk the cows, you bale the hay, you harvest the soybeans, whatever. And moving into this space where it's more about what we think, what we can dream and see, and then create a plan is very, very different. I mean, my dad, a wonderful, wonderful man, he never really understood what I did when I moved away from the farm. He understood those tangible things that you do to create income. And me, you get paid to think, to talk, to speak, to write. How's that possible? And in moving into the more spiritual, philosophical kind of components of how we live well, there's a teaching very popular about what follows I am, our I am statements. We so easily frame what our future is going to be by what follows I am. I am so busy. I'm exhausted. I'm so tired. I'm so frustrated. I'm so angry. I could spit nails. What follows I am, we invite more of into our life. It just is inevitable. So if you say, I'm so busy, guess what? You're going to see more and more that makes you busy. If you say, Callie, I'm energized. I'm thrilled that the sun is shining today. I'm excited about my interview with Lacey. You invite more of that into your life. Those are simple things, and I don't want to reduce this to some kind of simple first grade positive mental attitude, but those principles really do work. And I've been doing this a long time, and I see the evidence of that in my own life, as well as those with whom I have the privilege to work. I am. Be careful of the words. And once you start taking control of things like that, then you'll be able to swim out to your ship. You'll be able to identify what is it that I want to accomplish and see a plan. Once you believe in it, believe it's possible, it's amazing how it's like dominoes start to open the doors that lead in that direction.
Dan, I think that message was meant for me because recently I have noticed I have been saying I am so busy and I'm so stressed out to my family members. And it got to the point where there was something and my mom didn't invite me or my grandma or something. I was like, why didn't you? And they're like, we know how busy you are. And in my core, I'm like, my family always comes first. So it's like, I always want to be there. There's nothing more important than my family. And so I'm like, I could have totally adjusted my schedule to make that thing happen. But it's because I kept saying this mantra over and over again to my family members. So now when I talk to my mom or my grandma, my parents, I don't say that anymore. I'm so excited to talk to you that we're taking the time to catch up and I can't wait to see you, those type of things versus I'm so busy because then then it was like, okay, well, we don't want to bother her with one more thing.
Wow. And so you get excluded from important family activities.
Yes, yes. And thought they were helping me out, but that realized like that was, not really true. I'm not that busy for that. I just need to plan a little bit better or maybe say no to some things, but I don't need to not be there for family events and stuff like that. So I totally agree with those I am statements that they really do have power in your day. Well, how can people that really want to start making this change? So somebody that's on active duty right now or a military spouse that's listening and wants to create work and life that they love, how can they move forward with all of this?
Do that simple exercise to identify 3 areas. What are your skills and abilities? What are your personality tendencies? Meaning, how do you relate to other people? What kind of environment you're most comfortable in? You can be extremely successful. You don't have to remake how God has made you in terms of how you interact with other people. You don't have to become that hard driving in your face, aggressive, opinionated person. No, you don't have to at all. You can be very shy and introverted, but understand who you are because then we want environments that embrace that. So skills and abilities, personality tendencies, values, dreams, and passions. What are those things you see as you reflect back over your life where you've really come alive? Times when you just felt like this is what I was made to do. Embrace those things. Don't think that those are impractical or unrealistic. There's really nothing we could put in that combination that I just described that would be unrealistic or impractical. But then comes the opportunity. How can I utilize those, what I know about myself? How can I be Lacey, who wants to be primary caregiver of my children, but I still want to have a career. I still want to do something that generates income and has meaning beyond just the scope of my own family. Boom, whatever. That's not unrealistic at all. We think, well, gee, okay, so you can't have an 8-to-5 job. Well, that doesn't eliminate everything. There's so many other possibilities beyond that. So start with that. Just those 3 things. Clarify those, and that ought to give you a clear focus from which you can then make decisions about what fits.
Yes, I like the focus. I think that as my journey has gone on, that I started with a few core things that meant a lot to me. But then when I stepped into the next, I guess, circle, once I figured out, okay, this is what's important, this is what I want, this is what I'm good at, I have passion for, then I started to see more possibilities. Once you kind of figure things out, do you find that with people that you coach and all the process of writing this book is that sometimes when you're focused on so many things, you don't see all the possibilities. But if you start taking some things off your list, that you start to see that, wait, maybe this is the way I can make money. This is the way I could do it long term.
Well, when we move into the arenas that you and I are talking about here that tend to be creative, non-traditional, maybe more entrepreneurial, it opens up some new kind of factors there in that we tend to think we have to do everything. So you start a business where you write something or you're speaking or you're coaching, you're doing financial consulting as you're describing. And all of a sudden, there's a whole host of things that need to be done. But we can take the activities that we're doing, even in a small venture like that, and look at what are the things where we are incompetent. You can do it, but you really shouldn't be doing it. If it's, refilling the printer with toner or whatever, then what are the things where we are competent? We can do them, but you could probably have somebody else step into that and do it equally as well. What are the areas where you're excellent? Now, these are the things that kind of keep the cash coming in. You're kind of known for that. You know you can do that. But again, you're maybe one of many. What we look for, though, what is your unique ability? What is your zone of genius? That's where we want to expand. And in those, with the things that are incompetent, you want to eliminate. Things where you are competent, you want to delegate. Things where you are excellent, create systems for those. Things where your unique zone of genius, that's where you want to expand. When I started doing that exercise years ago, I was spending about 25% of my time in areas where I was incompetent and about 20% of my time in my zone of genius. My goal right now is to spend 75% of my time in my zone of genius. And what that's meant is that as I discover the different components that are required to make this little venture work, there are probably 20, 25 different things, even in my business, that are required to do. I probably do 2 or 3 of those pretty well. I have other people whose skills far surpass my own in those areas, and I allow them to be excellent in what they do. It makes all of this work and makes me able to then expand in the thing that only I can do. A lot of people get trapped in all the complexity of doing everything themselves, and they put a ceiling on what they're able to accomplish very, very quickly.
I think I was also supposed to receive that message as well, Dan. It's something that I've recently come to terms with, that I need to sort out of being in my zone of genius. But that's good for people that are really starting this out, to look at the whole picture or the life cycle of it and where you really are going to knock it out of the park. And if you're loading yourself down with stuff that's not your zone of genius, stuff that you're not competent at, then you're not able to really go for the gold.
And you can also sow the seeds of resentment, even though it's your thing that you're doing, if you allow those things to creep in that are not in your zone of genius.
Yes. For example, editing of my podcast. That is something that I did in the beginning, and I'm glad I did it. So I have an understanding of it and a deeper appreciation for what my editor does. And it's not my zone of genius. He's really great at it. And that's why I hired him. And not to mention, he's a great coach for me to give me tips to be a better podcaster. But that is not something that I want to do. And I was resentful of it. There was no way I would have kept my podcast going if I had continued to edit my own stuff. No way. So I see what you're saying.
That's a great example. Absolutely.
Yes. Deep, deep appreciation for you, Steve. I wanted to ask, because some people might be thinking this, I know it because I read up on it, but why 48 days?
Lacey, I would love to tell you that it was some real elaborate scientific study that we did and came up with that. It wasn't that at all. I'm an entrepreneur and I do a lot of things where I just shoot from the hip. You know, one of the things that defines me is ready, fire, aim. So 48 days, this was years ago. And I was working with people and they'd come in and, gee, my work life really does stink. So we'd map out a new plan and I'd see them a year later and they hadn't done anything. What's up with that? Well, I'm waiting until my kids graduate from high school. I'm waiting until we're going to move. And there has to be a timeline. This was back when 48 Hours was becoming popular as a TV show. And I simply did it as a lark. I thought, well, I'll bet I can get some brand recognition if I use 48. And it's not something generic. It's not 30, 90, 180, 120. It's something that makes people kind of stop and think. 48. So I just did it as a lark. I thought, well, we'll do this for a month. So we made it 48 days to the Work You Love. And with every order that went out, we sent 48 peppermint candies with the idea. They're energizing, they're revitalizing, but you eat one a day. At the end of those candies, you start the new chapter of your life. Well, it was like somebody poured gasoline on what I was doing because people showed up immediately. You mean I really can change my life in 48 days? And my answer then as now is yes, you can, if you create a plan and act on it. So it was not scientific, but oh my gosh, has it been magic in how it's impacted people. And I also relate it to, in the Bible, God always gave people 40 days. 40 days was kind of the magic number to change the direction of a country, change your thinking and all that. Well, I added in a few extra weekend days to make there a little less stringent, 48, but it's been a wonderful brand distinction for us over the years and an incentive to people, man. When I work with people, I stick to that. You're frustrated. Let's create a plan. I'm going to work with you diligently for 48 days. If on day 49, you're still doing what you were doing, hey, I'll still love you as a friend, but I'm moving on because I work with people who take action in that period of time.
That is so true because, if you're not there mentally, like you're saying that, oh, I can't, there's always an excuse why I can't do it. Well, then that's what's going to happen. So why would I continue to give my time to somebody that I can't want it for you more than you want it for yourself? I tell people that all the time with money. Like, I can't want you to be more successful with your money than you want it for yourself. Like, we get it backwards then.
That's right. That's right. And there's always reasons to wait, always reasons to still get ready a little bit more. And we see a lot of things in our society that embrace that kind of procrastination. And frankly, sometimes it's going to college. What's a politically acceptable way to not have to make a decision? And frankly, as you know, well, a lot of people do that with the military. Why don't we just do that? I don't really have to make these kind of hard decisions right away.
A lot of people do that decision. Should I stay in or should I get out? And that is, okay, well, I'll just stay in. They've delayed that decision, what they're going to do after they leave the military, which, some people do have a call to serve. I mean, I think everybody that, joins the military does, and that's wonderful. But yours might not be a call to serve for 20. Yours might be a call to serve for 4 years, have that experience, give the help and maybe move on. But you're right. People are delaying that decision oftentimes. I'll just stay in because I don't want to decide yet what I want to be when I grow up. I think that's really important. Well, do you have any last piece of advice for somebody that was wanting to change their career path or start really planning to have one that they have a deep appreciation for?
Yeah, my advice is to simply remember it's never too late to have a new beginning. I talk to people who are 27 years old who say, gee, I went to law school. I shouldn't have done that. It was a mistake. And they imply that, okay, now I'm just going to have to kind of coast into the grave. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You aren't old enough to even ask the right questions yet. See that as part of your learning, but don't see it as something that traps you. But then, so we see people no matter where they are. And if people have been in the military for 4 years or for 20 years or 30 years, think, well, maybe I missed my opportunity. No, not really at all. That can be a training ground for you. That can be part of your clarification process to now come out and go into the most productive 2 decades of your life.
That is a really good point. I'm not a big sports person, but from what I hear, Tom Brady is an older quarterback. But a long time ago, people didn't think that was a possibility to be playing at that level at his age. And look who just broke a ceiling.
No kidding. I love that. I'm not a sports guy particularly, but oh my gosh, I love how he's blazing a trail in areas where people said it couldn't be done.
Right. Why not you? Why can't it be you? I did hear that was, oh man, people are just going to be mad at me for butchering all the sports stuff, but he's a Seattle Seahawks quarterback, Russell. And I heard him when he won the Super Bowl for the first time. He said that his dad always said that to him. Why not you? Why can't you be a star quarterback, win the Super Bowl, whatever it was in his life? And I say that to my children now. I say it to myself. You know what? Like, let's just go for it. Why not you? Like, we'll see what happens. So I definitely tack on to what you're saying, that you should definitely go for it. It's never too late. Well, I want to ask you a couple of quick random questions that I ask everyone. One of them is, what is one resource or tool that makes your life easier?
I would quickly say Google Calendar. There are so many things that I do every week. And instead of having to write those down over and over again, no, they're just automatic. I mean, I can look at my schedule right now and tell you what I'm going to be doing the second week of October this year. Boom, it's already there. That's just been a magical tool to make that easy.
It really is, especially because it's on your phone. So whenever I go, like to a doctor's appointment, kids thing, grandma thing, I can look to be like, this is, my calendar, and you can schedule. So I completely agree with that one. What is your favorite book right now, or your favorite book of all time?
I am doing a year-long teaching of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill in our online community. That book had a major impact on me when I was a teenager. And I come back to it again and again and again. Not to just role model the author, he had his faults, but the message in there just resonates. Faith, imagination, desire. I mean, those are things that are principles that put in place can absolutely change your life. Being we are on video here, you can see just over my shoulder, there's a copy of the very original. That's one of the original print copies. My mastermind went together and got that for me a couple of years ago. It's the most valuable book I own and a prized possession. But the principles in there are just timeless.
That's really cool. What a great gift, first of all. They're very thoughtful. But yes, that's wonderful. I'm going to put a link for everybody in the show notes so they can check that out. And so you're working, just studying it for a year or teaching it for a year?
I'm taking one of the 13 principles 1 week a month and walking through the entire year with our online Eagles community. It's stretching people, moving them into this space. And in that, I mean, being rich doesn't mean that you have a Mercedes in the driveway. Being rich means that you have enough, that you have an abundance, that you have resources to share with other people. So it's more a mindset, again, that it is a number. When you work with finances, being rich, you work with people, I'm sure, that, make $80,000 a year and are extremely well set, and others make $250,000 a year who can't make the bills at the end of the month. It's not just a quantifiable thing. It's more mindset and being rich. I tell people that I'm a familionaire. I'm rich in family. I have 3 kids. I have 16 grandkids. I'm wealthy beyond description in that arena. So I look at areas of my life to be rich in areas, to not have the mindset of poverty that connotes fear and hopelessness and lack of options. I don't want that perception for anybody that I work with. So being rich is not just about increasing your bank account. It's making a life that is meaningful and purposeful. Very away in my description of the one book you asked me to describe.
Well, that's the kind of best book description, is that it sounds like you really love the book, and those are the ones we want to recommend. And 2, that can have an impact on somebody's life that, have never read that. I've never read that book. So I'm thinking now I need to read it.
You do.
Yes.
Oh, you do.
I think it exposes people to ideas and concepts and just maybe one nugget that changes somebody's life. That's one thing I love about this podcast, is there could be one thing that you said or I said or another guest said that is the one thing that motivated somebody to make a change or to do good or to do something different or to find hope. Whatever the positive factor is, I think that you just never know.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, which is game time. And today we're going to play This or That. And so I'm going to give you basically just 2 things, and you have to tell me which one you want, this or that. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Audiobook or book?
Book.
Okay. Cake or pie?
Pie.
Yes, that's a good one. Are you high tech or low tech?
Low tech.
Couch or recliner?
Recliner.
Yes. All right. Dog or cat?
Dog.
Phone call or text?
Text.
Facebook or Twitter?
Oh, yuck. Facebook.
Okay. I'm going to end with a hard one. Laundry or dishes?
Dishes.
Dishes. Okay. I think I'm dishes as well. Well, Dan, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I enjoyed talking to you. There's so much more I could have asked you, but maybe you'll come back and we can have another discussion. Can you tell everybody listening where they can learn more about you and what you're up to?
Sure. We've referenced the concepts in 48 Days to the Work You Love. We have a page set up, actually a unique landing page for your listeners, that being 48days.com/military money. If they go there, they'll get access to the first chapter, some other resources to go along with that to encourage them on most of the principles we've talked about here today. So thank you for that opportunity.
Yes, I encourage everybody to check it out. I'll put it in the show notes. There's a lot of wonderful resources, and you can get a chapter of the book for free, which if you read that, I think you're going to be really jazzed about the entire book. So definitely check it out. Thank you again, Dan. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Thanks to Dan for coming on the show to talk about creating work you love. Thank you to Charles Schwab for providing support to the Military Money Show. To learn more about Charles Schwab and how they can help you reach your financial goals, visit schwab.com today. You can also head over to lacylangford.com to get all the show notes and the resources Dan is making available to help you create work you love. I appreciate you listening, and I will talk to you next week.